Okay, let's get started. Greg Liggett is our COO. He's sat in every seat on the bus at Leadership Network throughout the years, and he's going to be walking us through today. Jeremy Gillespie is from our partner at Glue. We've been working with Glue now for 18 months or so, working on Glue Insights and also some of these new pieces that we're going to reveal to you today. And so Jeremy's been with us almost the entire time. We're happy he's our partner in this project. So Greg, take it away.
Thanks, Dave, and welcome each of you that are with us today. We are very excited about this new project that we're working on. It's been a great joy to work with the team there at Glue the last 18 months. And we just excited to unveil some of the new thinking, some of the new projects, some new one of the new pilots that we're working on. As we've communicated along the way, our goal over the course of this 30 minutes is to introduce this new tool to you, and then we hope to enlist 3 of you to employ this tool as a part of our pilot project as we begin to launch it. So let me just kind of dive in and tell you a little bit about it. What we're calling this is a Leadership Network Leads Score, and this you can see here over on the right. We're going to be able to. This score will use assessment results in 5 different areas. I'm going to share those with you in just a moment. It'll help your church to identify multiple layers of leaders among your members. If you've been a part of one of our accelerators, I think most of you have been, you're aware of some of the work that we're doing with Glue, and you're aware of the fact that we're really early in to this movement and this understanding of how data can help us further engage people in our congregations, how it can help us to help them become better leaders and a variety of things. So this tool is one of the tools that we're using to help begin to develop that. As also, you know that if you've been a part around Leadership Network for very long, you know that we're always helping churches look around the corner to see what's next. And so as we look at these kind of tools, it kind of takes me back to probably 15 years ago when Dave and I were part of some of the early conversations around multi-site. And in those days, the models changed, the language changed, and continues to morph and change. And so we're kind of at that stage again with this area of big data and engagement. So Leadership Network Lead Score will help us to do that. And we're going to move on forward. I'll give you a little bit of sense of what the different factors are. If I can get my screen to advance. Here we go. So we're going to be asking questions in these 5 areas. The assessment asks questions in these 5 areas around leadership opportunity. Do people feel encouraged to lead? Around experience, do people have experience in leading? Availability, will people make themselves available to lead or to be trained? Do they have a driving purpose? Do people feel they have the capacity and the calling to lead? And then a very important piece is the spiritual nurture. Do your people feel that they are growing as a follower of Christ? And so these are some of the scores. These are some of the questions that we're going to be asking that will help us to develop the scores that I want to share with you a little bit. This is how it's going to add value to your church. There's a couple of things that we're looking at with this tool. One is it will give you a score of your church's effectiveness related to leadership in terms of development and giving people opportunity to lead and be trained in leadership, as well as nurture, spiritual nurture. And then it's also going to lead to an opportunity for you to capture leaders and potential leaders and volunteers with a call to action. It will, as you'll see as we go through and give you a chance to kind of see the assessment, the final page will actually be a landing page that you'll work with your Glue partner to develop. Will be kind of a next steps action page where you'll be able to capture the names of leaders and potential leaders. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But let me just now move to kind of what's the process look like. It's a very simple process. It's a 3-minute survey that you will deploy to your congregation. We'll go through a scoring process, and then there will be a report that you will receive based on the results from your congregation. These are some of the things that we're going to be looking at here that you'll get, will be a part of the report. One will be around church effectiveness. And these are several scores we're looking at. So church leadership development effectiveness. How satisfied is your congregation with the church's opportunities, with the church's leadership opportunities and opportunities for training? Another result that we'll be able to get around church effectiveness is around church nurture. Again, how satisfied is your congregation with the church's growth and engagement opportunities? A third one around church effectiveness will be spiritual nurture. Do the people that are completing this survey and this assessment indicate that they're experiencing high spiritual growth? And then a fourth piece that we'll be able to give you some insight into is around the whole area of small group recruitment. You'll be able to identify those that are part of your congregation that are not currently involved in a small group with some opportunities to move towards some activation to those folks. Then the other category, the other area that we'll be looking at is looking at some example leaders. So for example, we'll be able to look at these scores and give you a sense of leaders that are available to lead. They have potential, capacity, and they've indicated they have some availability. Also, we'll be looking at trainable leaders. Trainable leaders are ones whose scores indicate they have capacity and they really desire to be trained as a leader. The third category that we're looking at as an example would be a supercharged leader. This is someone that shows high capacity, they have great experience, and they have availability, and they've expressed interest in getting involved now and being engaged in truly leading something in your congregation. And then the fourth would be eager to lead. They show capacity and availability to be engaged. They may not have a lot of great experience, but they do have capacity to do so and have availability to be involved in leadership with you as well. So these are some of the kinds of things we're going to be looking for. These scores are sample scores. We'll be continuing to refine those as the churches participate in our test, our beta test of this. But these are the kinds of things we'll be going to be developing. I'm going to move next to, as I mentioned, those are the results, and then you'll get a report, and this is simply a mock-up of the report. You can see down here across the bottom, available leaders, eager to lead, potential small group members, a desire to lead. These are some of those scores that we just talked about in terms of church effectiveness and then different categories of leaders. And then we'll be also adding in some additional data based on the feedback that we're able to get from participants in the survey that will show perhaps their age, attendance history, past year attendance. We'll be able to do some matching against your church's database as well. So this is kind of a sample of a report that will begin to be developed that you'll receive. Let me say one more thing, and I want to pass it over to Jeremy, who will kind of walk us through the assessment. These are some of the things that we're trying to do as we work with the 3 churches to test this assessment. One is we want to look at the survey participants' willingness to share share personal contact information. You'll see as we move into the beginning of the survey, there's a place where they can give us their name and email and that kind of contact information. It's not required, but we're going to use this as a test to see how willing they're able to provide us with that kind of information. And then secondly, do individuals opt in for opportunities when they've stated a desire to participate? Again, I mentioned that kind of next steps landing page that we'll go to. So we'll be able to look and see, are people likely to activate against that? And then thirdly, as I mentioned, these scores will kind of morph and change as we go through the process of developing this tool and fine-tuning it. So we want to move to the place where we can begin to really normalize some of these leadership scores so you can have the opportunity to grade yourself and to see where your improvement has been, both as a congregation, but then also as a norm against other congregations that would be similar to your size or your area of the country. So those are some of the kind of key learnings that we're moving toward. I want to pass it over to Jeremy, and Jeremy will kind of walk you through the survey. But just a reminder, if you have a question or a comment, please use the chat function for that, and Dave's going to be kind of monitoring that as we get to the Q&A time. He'll be posing some of those questions. So Jeremy, why don't you take it away and walk us through the survey.
Great. Thanks, Greg. So you guys should be able to see my screen now, which is actually the landing page for the leadership survey. As Greg mentioned, with the example report that you saw, those answers and those percentages numbers are actually coming from these answers from the survey or the assessment, as we like to call it here at Glue, that your congregates could be taking. So you'll see here that we've got the leadership survey, the length, 24 questions, about 4 to 7 minutes is what it takes. This may be the easiest thing you will implement within your church in recent history, but this is also customizable towards your church. So want to keep that in mind as well. Participants have the ability here to just look at the terms of service and privacy policy. I know those are big things, big topics these days, but we're going to continue on. And here they have the option of adding their first name, last name, email, and phone number. Of course, this is all optional. If the participant wants to add this in, they can. And it's in a non-identifiable group summary report, which is exactly what Greg showed you early as that mock-up example. And continuing on, we're actually going to get into the assessment itself. So here's the age. I'm just going to choose random questions or random answers here to move through. And as you see, as we choose an answer, it just moves to the next one. Gives us a little bit of a category if I went too fast for that. So this is your level of agreement with the following statements. We continue on. I'm routinely engaged in a small group for growth, care, or service. So you can see from like the leadership examples, maybe this is someone that's interested in being in a small group or has the capacity to lead. So as I answer them, and I'm just going to move through, give you a little bit of a chance to read a little bit of what the question might be, explore and understand the leadership opportunities for my congregation. I have experience in leading these types of groups, small groups, classes, volunteer teams. I have consistency and growth habits. I want to take on responsibilities. And then here's a great one. Within the congregation, I'm encouraged to participate and serve as a volunteer. I'm just going to keep moving through here. Here's a great one too. I'd love to free up some time in my schedule to help in a leadership role. So you're getting all this great information from your congregants and members about their availability and willingness to serve within the church. Then we also have some, maybe like you see this in a workplace or parachurch or volunteer organization, maybe it's like Red Cross, Young Life, something like that, that they have experience in leading. So it gives you a baseline there of their leading abilities. I'm already currently leading something. A little bit of a growth pattern with being a Christian. What does it look like for their life leading in different roles? And now we're getting into a little bit, hey, are you married? Are you widowed, divorced, separated, never married? How long have you been here at our church? And then as we continue, we get to the last page. Now this is where it comes into a really customizable experience for your congregants or members. I'm going to click the button that says find a resource in just a moment, but I want to also prep this with, as I click the find a resource, this is actually connected to Leadership Network's resource page. So think of this example of Leadership Network's resource page as it directs to that. So here we land, and we've got all the resources and downloads that Leadership Network offers. Now imagine if you had your own landing page for your church, customized for this assessment and for your congregants to land on an event. Maybe it's, hey, we want to take all the leaders, and we want to see how willing you are to join us in an event about growing leaders or becoming a leader or a volunteer within your congregation. What about if it was actually a sermon series? Maybe it's some other type of programming. This is all customizable. So this could be your church. They land here. They could sign up for an event. They could give a little bit more information about who they are and how they want to help out. So think of this as a customizable experience that your congregants can land on so that you can further activate on those people taking the assessment. Any questions about that within the chat that you're seeing, Dave?
I don't have any questions yet in the chat. I'd love to see some because I know we went through that quickly. So here's one question. Is the option customized questions or answers? Saw one that asked, hang on just a second. Saw one that asked if you are currently a leader of a small group, but it still had 1 to 7. Isn't that a yes or no question? What I found is that sometimes people lead a small group and it's not affiliated with your church, just to give that out there for you. They may have a small group that they're actually a part of at another church or through some other experience, Christian experience, just to give a quick answer. Since personal info is elective, I'm curious to see what the follow-up looks like post-assessment, assuming they do not elect the next step. Good question. I'll let Jeremy and Greg answer that.
Yeah, let me get into actually the chat. I want to see these questions as well. I'm curious to see if the follow-up looks like post-assessment, assuming they do not elect the next step. So that's a great question. And remember about with the resources page. So the landing page at the end of the assessment, excuse me. So we can customize from the Glue side where those participants will land. And so let's say if they don't put in their personal information at the very beginning, but they want to have some type of follow-up or call to action from you, the pastor or the church, that's where your landing page can also ask for that as an event registration or other information where you can gather their personal information. They may not feel comfortable doing that on the assessment. We totally get that. That's also part of the key learnings. Keep that in mind is how often will people opt in with personal information. I hope that answers the question. Love the tool. Love the customized options. Great, thank you. And I got a yep, so that means I answered the question. Great. Is there another one that I missed? I saw one that asked if you are currently a leader of a small group, but it still had the 1 through 7 options. Is that a yes or no question? It can be. It can be changed. Absolutely. And I'm not seeing any others about the assessment. I realized I did run through that quickly. I figure you guys did not want me to read all the questions. You probably slept well enough last night, hopefully. You don't need another sleep aid.
Yeah, and Jeremy did go through very quickly. The whole survey is really just designed to take about 2 or 3 minutes. And actually, Jeremy went through it about 4 times as long as it usually take for just a participant. And it looks great on mobile as well. I will tell you that.
Yes. So I was using the web version, so from a browser, but it is mobile as well.
There's a question, how is it deployed to the congregation? So we can either answer that now, or I think the next slides may help us get to that answer.
Yeah, let's go to the next slides. Actually, Greg, great, you grabbed it back. Thank you.
Let me get to the next one here. Yeah, so this is what the process will look like. If you're interested in being a part of being one of the test churches, just shoot me an email. It's right here on the screen, greg.ligon@leadnet.org. You do have to have a current Glue license, Glue Insights license to be a part of the test. And then, once you've indicated that you have interest, over the next 10 days, we're going to be selecting the 3 churches that will be a part of the test. We are hoping to accomplish this, do this test over the next 45 to 60 days. We're intentionally chose this window because this is the time that you've told us that you have fewer visitors and more kind of your core members that are there over the summer months. And so we're trying to get this done during that season. Also will help us to really be able to get some of this data that will help us to refine for a broader rollout in the fall. Once that we've selected the 3, then I will put you in touch with Jeremy and the team at Glue, and they will work with you through the deployment process. There is, as he mentioned, there's a way to customize the end of the survey, so you'll be able to take them to the appropriate landing page for you. They can have a conversation with you about what are the kinds of things you might want to include on that landing page and really help you to map that out. and then also will provide you with the tools for actually activating the survey. There'll be both Jeremy, I think I'm correct in that there's both a text version as well as a link, or a QR code or a link. Is that how that gets activated?
Yeah, thanks, Greg, for throwing that this way, because I've actually got Matt Engel here, who many of you guys know, and he's actually wants to give a little bit of information about how he's seen the deployment happen in the past with other churches.
Great.
Yeah. So a couple of really interesting learnings that we've had with churches that have deployed assessments in the past, congregation wide, have been an interesting phenomenon based around generation and onboarding. So what I'm going to suggest is that there's multiple ways to onboard the assessment. We've seen just a URL code posted on the screens during the sermon. We've seen it printed in a bulletin. We've seen short code texting, so the text in option to text this keyword to this number and it'll onboard the assessment. And an interesting one that's actually coming back around is a QR code. So the phones have been updated now to where you no longer need an app to read a QR code. All you need is your camera turned on and flash the QR code either on the screen or in a bulletin or in a handout of some type. And it automatically brings forward the onboarding scenario of the assessment. And what's been really interesting from my perspective with some of the churches that we've been kind of testing this stuff out with has been that generational split. So we're seeing boomers actually leverage the URL link disproportionately to Gen X's, which are predominantly using the text-in option, and millennials are actually going back and using QR code. So there's an interesting dynamic here that we might suggest, Mark at your church or Tim at your church, maybe your generations that are a part of your church, or with the insights you can know that could inform how we actually want to deploy it. And we could actually begin to test out a couple of different options, even within this leadership thing of what is the onboarding preferred methodology at your individual churches. So I say that to say there's a couple of different options for Mark based upon how to deploy it. I would suggest we could actually learn a lot. Even in addition to the leadership, we could learn about deployment methodologies at your specific church.
So just to clarify, if you're the pastor,
yep,
I'm a person sitting out in the congregation,
yep,
I've got my smart device, phone, iPad, whatever it may be. If you choose to do a QR code and it's on the screen, I point my camera at the screen.
That's right.
It grabs the QR code. It sends me back, hey, here's the URL, take the assessment.
That's right.
The other way would be with the short text.
That's right.
Hey, text Jeremy to
That's
this
right.
number, and then it comes back to me with the URL in that text message. I click on the URL and it sends me right to the assessment.
That's right. Yep. They all land in the same spot. And to Travis's point earlier, or to Dave's point earlier, it's all mobile and web responsive, so it's customized to the phone from that perspective.
Yeah.
So
us Gen Xers did not like QR codes. They didn't
no.
work.
And we had to download a
just
separate
given them.
app, and we didn't like that. Whereas millennials, you don't have an app. You just use your camera, and you don't want to text anything because you don't want your cell phone to do that number or whatever. Yep. Or you're too short-coded. You don't like.
Generational.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Does Glue partner with Canadian churches?
Yeah, for the assessment, yeah. Geography doesn't matter in this instance. So to be able to deploy this from a leadership development perspective, Victor, is an option for you guys up north.
Great. I'm not seeing.
Great. Are there any more questions? We'd love to have more questions. We want to answer them fully. We've got a few minutes left before we're done for the day on this. I hope you're excited about the possibilities. We also hope that some of you will send an email to Greg that says, hey, yeah, we'd like to be considered to be involved. We're only going to work with 3 right now because we want to test it, get it right. Also to give opportunity to refine the reporting and work with churches in a deep way to make sure we're giving you good information that can be useful for you to help leaders advance in your church.
And if you look in the chat, Greg has posted his email. That's the contact email, so you can cut and paste there, click on it, and just send him an email now if you're interested.
So there's a question about how customized it is. So if you've been around us long enough, you know that I have a sort of a banter of, don't extract value from your people without giving value back. And that's really the customization side of the equation. So the goal here is to actually begin to move your congregation as well to being more data informed. And so by providing that customized value, Mark at Pure Heart, it could be a simple landing page with like 3 leadership books that you guys as a church sort of staff kind of recommend. At one church in particular, where it was all around date night and sort of leadership and date night, it was about how to serve well in your relationship. And it was a simple little landing page, but we were actually being able to track click-through rates and responsiveness so that we could actually see full spectrum as far as how many people started it, how many people completed it, how many people clicked on the call to action, and then how many people clicked within the web, your own customized web experience. To be able to see that actually gives us visibility into how relevant did you do a match based upon leadership. So if you recommended a really poor book, they might not have clicked on, I want to get that book. So there's a couple of different things as far as building out the customization that we'll be able to help you with, even sort of from a more full spectrum. Are the questions customizable? No, those are actually baked on the research that has actually backed sort of a national longitudinal study. So the reason why we're using those is because we can go back to research and say, this is statistically valid. Whereas if we brought forward a customized question, we might not know if that's actually validity or not based upon just sort of me making up a question because I think I'm a good question person.
Well, I think the thing too to note here, Matt, is that that's the reason we're doing these pilots, right? Is because as we work with the data and work with development of the reports, we may identify that there are some questions that need to be tested in order to get us more effective scores. But for this round, the questions are not customizable.
That's right.
This is all about running with us and helping us make this better, and with our partnership with Leadership Network to take this to the next level. So we'd love to have you in partnership with this and helping us test it out.
Great. And I just want to kind of say two more things. One is just kind of reiterate what Matt said. We, in addition to the learning process, we want this to be something that adds value to you and to the people who take the survey in your church. And so that's why it's really important for us to work with you and with the Glue team to work with you to identify kind of what those next step opportunities are, and whether that's gathering additional information for someone to be able to do additional follow-up, or whether that's providing a great resource for them so that they feel like that their investment, taking the assessment, ended up you investing in them, and some kind of a resource. And that's really, really important for us. And then finally, I just want to say, as I've kind of walked through the process here, once you've deployed, then in a couple weeks post your deployment, then we'll get on the phone with you with your report. It'll be someone from our team and someone from the Glue team kind of walking through the report and the things that we've observed, and also get any feedback that you might have as we continue to shape this Leadership Network Leads survey tool.
Hey, John and Victor, we can follow up separately on the Canada question. I know what you're saying, so I'd say let's circle up with ping Greg if you're interested, and then on the Glue side we can talk separately. So don't sweat that.
All right, I'll seeing no more questions, I'm going to close this today. I will say that over my 24 years with Leadership Network, I know lots of leaders that they think they know what's going on in their congregation's head, and they guess. This is a way to really know what's going on when it comes to leadership, how people feel, how people think, how well they feel they're being served, and how well they think they can serve God's kingdom work through your church. So I'd encourage you to test it, to try it. I want to thank you for joining with us today. As a part of this webinar, we've kept it short on purpose. I want to thank Jeremy and Matt, also Greg, for being our hosts. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you'll agree that this was useful, and I hope you'll consider being part of our pilot project here. Thanks again. Let me close this in prayer. God, thanks for every team member that's joined us today from our congregations that we serve. I pray that even this week, that you would take this time and make it useful to them. You would strengthen them for your service there all around our country and Canada so that they can better serve you by serving God's people. We pray all these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.